Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
How's it going, Mets and baseball fans? Thank you all so much for chiming in for another live stream on the channel. Back-to-back days as we are discussing all the latest news regarding the Mets and their present baseball operations / GM search. And quite a bit has come out over the past 24 to 48 hours, including some news shortly before coming live here today. And that's specifically why I've been choosing later in the day, at least 7 p.m. or so, because usually there's been some stuff. If stuff is destined to come out at all throughout the day, it's normally coming out towards the evening, so that's why we're live here at this point. But we're going to be getting into a lot, not just regarding the search, but also some separate things connecting the Mets that have been reported today and over the past 24 hours that we'll be starting off today's conversation with. But as always, guys, thank you all so much for first chiming in, whether you're watching this live on replay. Please make sure to smash that like and subscribe on if you guys are looking forward to the stream. Help us get to 10K subs for the next short-term goal, and which we'll be doing a giveaway once we do, in fact, reach that plateau on the channel. But thank you all for the support. I see Michael, Buzz Talk, how's it going? Max, North, Joseph, Brandon, Thomas, great member on the channel. Tim, great member on the channel. Long time no see. How you doing, buddy? Max, Dave, great friend and subscriber on the channel. Gerald, great member on the channel. Leon, Jose, all you guys, thank you all so much for chiming in. Appreciate each and every one of you. And Sandy, great member. How you doing, buddy? And everyone else. And I'll be getting to plenty of questions. Andre, how's it going? Bear with me 1 second, folks. I'm trying to see. I thought I saw a comment. Stephen A., what's up, my man? Long time no see. I've been great. How about you? Thank you for being here. Kish, Ethan, Ron, Fly Eagles TV, Mad Mike Sports and Entertainment. How's it going, everybody? RJ Allen, Roblox, awesome. Thank you guys for being here. Give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to just share the audio with you so that way you guys get the background music, because I meant to share it before we went live, and me being my dumb self did not do it. But I'll just get to 100 likes by the end of the live stream. That's always appreciated, folks. Already a $5 donation. My goodness, we haven't even gotten into anything. So we're about to dive in, folks. I'm doing great, though. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm a little tired today. I really don't know why. I haven't had anything strenuous. I've been working all day, but nothing that's out of the norm. But I've been good other than that. Let's see. Already the donation from Gabe. Thank you for that, buddy. How in the chat for Gabe? What would you think the Mets payroll will be? Okay, that's a great question, Gabe. I have a feeling the Mets are going to be pushing a $250 million payroll. I think that is actually very realistic. Whether or not they push north of 300 or stay more at tops 250 range, I don't know yet, but I do feel confident the Mets are going to go over the luxury tax threshold. But folks, let's just dive into things. We have a lot that we need to get into today, and we normally go about an hour or so here in the live stream. So let's start off. As you know, in case you guys are not aware, there were details that came out right around yesterday from Mike Puma talking about the rat and raccoon situation with Lindor and Mcneil. And this is something that I didn't want to shed like too much response on, mainly because it's not a good look, and it's frustrating that this comes out as soon as the season ends to begin with. It's frustrating that this came out in general. Something literally just flew in my eyes. So if I'm like blinking and looking stupid, I apologize. I know I look stupid, but I'm going to look more stupid than usual if I'm kind of like this. So my apologies, folks. But what I saw from this article, what bothered me the most is that this came out. And I'm not sure what your guys' stance is on this, but what transpired between Mcneil and Lindor is something in my mind that should stay in-house. It's not something that should be made public. And I understand that reporters were upset that they blatantly lied so bad. I can understand that. I do. But from the player side of things as well, this is something that should not have been leaked out. And the type of information that came out, there was a lot of speculation to believe that, did this come from potentially, I don't know, Zach Scott? It's kind of an odd coincidence how only a couple days after Zach Scott is dismissed as acting GM for the New York Mets, a very detailed report comes out as the anonymous source through Mike Puma of the New York Post. And it gave off details, especially regarding Jeff McNeil, that had me thinking exactly about what transpired with Zach Scott throughout the season in one of his pressers, where he was saying there was really a lack of accountability with some players when it came to their health. And he was very blatant in saying how there were players that had been stubborn and basically did not listen, and it ultimately led them to having some issues, whether it be continuously having a nagging injury or doing something else. And in direction of what the article stated, and again, how true this is, we don't necessarily know. That's why you have to take everything to a certain grain of salt, especially Mike Puma. He's been wrong plenty before, as he's been right too. But for this to come out, one, it's not a good look. I do not like the fact that this is made public. And if this especially was from Zach Scott, again, we're talking hypothetical here because I don't have a factual response as to who it was the source here. But if it was Zach, that's not a good look on him. And that is further proof of why the Mets should not have kept him. Okay. It's one thing to be a smart executive. It's another to be already giving details out like this that a true professional normally does not allow to be made public. So I'm just saying, if we're connecting the dots, if this is from Zach, then I think it's a poor look on him. And it only further proves why, essentially, besides the DWI situation, that the Mets parted ways with him. But in case you guys don't know the details on this, and I just want to touch on it quick, it was that, yes, Lindor, put McNeil apparently in a chokehold, pinned him up against the wall in the game against the Arizona Diamondbacks. I remember that game like it was yesterday, all the controversy. The Mets ended up winning that game, no less. And I believe Lindor had a pimped a home run too in that one. But regardless, what the article stated was how Lindor was unbelievably frustrated with McNeil and really just his misplays at second base because he wouldn't abide by the shift. And something that is worrisome to me in regards to this, should it be true, is the fact that Francisco Lindor is someone who is a heavy advocate against the shift. He doesn't like the shift at all. He said that as soon as he became a Met, that was one of the first critiques he had, for sure, going into the year. He absolutely hates it, doesn't like it. He doesn't like not being able to be his natural self as a Gold Glove winning shortstop who's a Gold Glove finalist yet again this year, and who had a very strong year defensively for the Mets in his first year. McNeil, there were multiple scenarios where apparently that Lindor would tell him to go the shift or like go in a certain spot, and McNeil would basically say, shut up, I got it. And that sounds something that McNeil would say, given his attitude. And I know McNeil definitely gets frustrated easily, especially when he's not playing well. Emotion is a huge factor into his game. But it really just told me that if everything that was aligned here from this article, again, check it out, guys, if you haven't already, is true, then this might just be another potential factor into McNeil being parted with from the Mets. Now, I'd like to make clear that I do not advocate what Francisco Lindor did whatsoever. That is not a good look at all. I think that you can handle things better without violence. I don't justify his actions at all. He was in the wrong for that. But with saying that, the same can be said for McNeil here, should everything that has been reported to be true, and him not listening. If you look at the Mets, they had one of the better defensive infields all year long with all the injuries that they had, because their alignment with the shift was spot on for the large portion of the 2021 season. So say what you will about liking or disliking the shift, it definitely benefited the Mets more than it was against them from the offensive side of things, with, grounding out into a play because of the shift, maybe on the right side, on the left side, or whatever it may be. Mets did a great job defensively for the most part in 2021, commanding the shift to their advantage. And Lindor, someone that doesn't like it at all, still did it because he knows what it takes to win and knows what what he has to do. And Mcneil came off very stubborn and not willing to do so. And then coincidentally enough, the Mets acquire Javi Baez, who I understand his connection with Lindor, but then gets slotted in at second base. Now, how much of a connection could you say goes in hand with Mcneil and his stubbornness? I don't necessarily know. But the moral of the point that I'm trying to get to here is that Jeff McNeil, if he is parted with from the Mets this offseason, I feel very comfortable saying that it has far more to do with things of him as a player, with his personality and how he has been maybe not necessarily behaving properly when it comes to, doing the right things on the infield or just in general about going his at-bats versus his actual performance in 2021, because I do expect him to bounce back and be a dominant hitter again, a guy that gets on base multiple times a game, a 300 average hitter, north of that at least, in the seasons upcoming. So I don't know what the future holds for Jeff McNeil, but I will just say that this just adds another potential example as to why the Mets may part with him in the offseason. And again, I'm not choosing sides here. I don't advocate with what Lindor did, and I don't advocate what McNeil did, but I understand from Lindor's side of things, trying to be responsible and helping the Mets win the best way that they can, especially from the defensive front. I can understand frustration. I don't agree with what he did, but I'm saying that it makes sense to me. I don't agree with the outcome, but it makes sense with the buildup if everything is reported. And again, folks, if you're just chiming in, thank you all so much for being here again. Please make sure to smash that like and subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the live stream. We're going to be getting into all these topics as you see here. I know a lot of you guys in the chat are talking about a lot of the other things too. So we're going to dive in. Next topic that I want to get to outside of, if anyone has comments in particular on what has happened with the Mets, please make sure to let me know in regards to the Lindor McNeil situation. If you have anything that you want to get off your chest about, please make sure to do just that. Bear with me 1 second, folks. There's just one thing I need to do quick because I'm having slight lag issue, and I do believe I understand why. So just give me 1 second, folks. How's the audio sounding and everything? Is everything sounding and looking visually okay to you guys? Let me know in the chat. Okay, but with saying that, let's talk about Kevin Pilar. And I'd like to shout out my good friend Dave in the live stream right now for being, not just a great friend and supporter on the channel, but if you guys don't know by now, Dave has been unbelievably generous. He sent so many things my way. Multiple things on the wall behind me are because of Dave, and along with the mug here. But one thing that Dave sent me, and I will say I'm more proud of this than not, because I feel like I'm the only Mets fan that has it, is this Kevin Pilar jersey for the New York Mets. Because Kevin Pilar is no longer a New York Met. In case you guys are not aware, both the Mets and Kevin Pilar came to a mutual agreement to part ways, because both of them declined. Like, they both had options. There was a player option and a club option, and they both went the different routes. So Pilar is hitting the free agent market, and he's really just betting on himself to make sure that he can get more than a 1.5 million. And that's very realistic for him in free agency. So while it's unfortunate a little bit to see Kevin go, I enjoyed his time in Queens. He was fourth on the Mets in home runs this year, which I think says more about the Mets' poor offense than it does necessarily him exceeding expectations, because I know he had to play a lot because of injuries that were happening to the club. But no less, I enjoyed Kevin. Superman, was heroic at times for the Mets, really gave a spark to them when it felt like that the normal guys on the lineup couldn't get it done in a lot of occasions. And don't get me wrong, he was definitely inconsistent, was not a guy that should be playing every day. But still, for what the Mets acquired him for and for what he did, I appreciate it very much. And I really enjoyed him on the Mets during his short tenure. So I'm wishing him the best in free agency. But yes, Kevin Pilar is no longer a New York Met. We do love Dave. And guys, shout out to Nina, my girlfriend, in the chat. Everyone say hello to Nina as well. Thank you for chiming in, Nina. I appreciate that. Looks good. Awesome. Appreciate you guys. But yeah, so to wrap things up to this point, before we get into all the present baseball operations and GM talk, again, Lindor McNeil situation, not pretty. Don't like that. Feel like that's really not a good thing to leak either. A lot about that situation I don't like in general. I'm not surprised that was like what actually happened, because everyone was believing it was a fight. It really felt that way, and it didn't get to fisticuffs. At least it was just choking, which again isn't good. But yeah, I'm not surprised. Annoying that it came out at this point, because I'm bothered by whoever was the one to leak that. I think that says more about them than it does about the Mets to a certain extent. And Pilar, again, love Kevin Pilar at times, and he's no longer a New York Met. So we'll see where he lands in free agency, because I doubt the Mets obviously are not going to be bringing him back. I do not get my eyebrows threaded, no. I normally my barber literally just cleans them up in 2 seconds. Pilar seemed to have issues with the clubhouse. From what I've seen, I actually tend to disagree with you, only because Kevin Pilar was part of the bench mob and was a heavy advocate for, being a positive factor in the clubhouse from everything that was made public. So I don't necessarily know how much I agree with that remark, Jose. But again, this is as far as to what we know that we've seen public. What happens in closed doors, how all players react with another, is something that I don't know. We don't know unless, of course, it becomes made public. And who knows if more stuff comes out. We'll see. It wouldn't surprise me at this rate with what was just leaked. And yes, I have gotten my eyebrows threaded once, and it did not feel good. And I do not intend to do it anytime soon. Will the main responsibility for selecting players be the president of baseball operations or the GM? It's going to be the GM, Gerald, because GM is the guy going to be making that move. But it really, let me put it this way. If the Mets hire a president of baseball operations and a GM, they're both going to have say in these decisions. But naturally, the GM should be the driving force in that spot. And the president of baseball operations is sharing his input as well. He's a part of the process. So they're together. And that's why it's okay to have a GM run president baseball operations and what he's doing. That's probably the route the Mets are going down, according to some assumed reports at this point. But you can't have a president baseball operations and not a GM. You know what I mean? It's like something can be one way, something can be two things, but reversal, it can't be the other way around. That's kind of how president baseball operations and GMs work. But let's talk about it now, because that's exactly why we're doing this live stream, everybody. So in case you guys are not aware on what has happened with the Mets and their GM search, what came out yesterday, I believe, it was yesterday or the day before, is Afterman, who is the assistant GM for the New York Yankees, woman, very credible as well. She declined the Mets, in which the Yankees allowed access to interview her, or at least speak to her, a week ago is when that came out. So add another name that did not become public to not just media, but us fans until after they declined. This doesn't phase anything for me. Again, the Mets are reaching out to literally at least like one executive from every club, because a lot of teams have great-minded executives, including herself. So it's not surprising to see her deny the Mets, especially given the fact that she is with the Yankees. So not surprising to me whatsoever. But you can cross her off the list before we could even put her on. Then we go further. Then we have Adler, who is the assistant GM and I believe VP for the Minnesota Twins. This is a younger-minded executive, younger in general, Harvard grad. Originally worked with the Jacksonville Jaguars in the NFL before then coming to the Twins, and he's been doing a really solid job there. He declined the Mets, but from what reports indicate, it had far more to do with him really wanting to stay in Minnesota and get things. He felt he wasn't ready yet to basically take that next step with an opposing club. So that's why he stayed. So from everything that indicated, it didn't seem like it had to do nearly as much with the Mets as to do with him just not being comfortable yet to be in a greater position than what he's currently in. So he's staying in his spot with the Twins as assistant GM. He declined over the past 48 hours as well, as I'm sure many of you are aware about by now. A report that came out shortly before coming live here over the past 1 or 2 hours at the time being live here. And again, folks, if you're enjoying this stream, make sure to smash that like and subscribe button again. Thank you all for the support. But the latest report that came out was from Tim Healy, who covers the Mets, one of their main reporters, said that according to a source, and again, take this as you will, because we all know that reporters can be wrong like no tomorrow, that the Mets are not expected to hire a president of baseball operations or GM this weekend, which means that they will be going into the GM meetings starting Monday with Sandy Alderson. Now, naturally, that's something that I don't like to see. I don't think it's an end-all situation either, however, because Sandy, Steve, while those are guys I don't want controlling baseball ops, I don't mind them handling the current free agents on the Mets for the most part, because these are guys that will be getting qualifying offers, looking for new deals, and no one really knows how to evaluate them better than the people that have been in the organization, because they've been the ones watching them either over this past year or multiple years. So that I'm content with. But what I'm not okay with is if the Mets really prolong this process, and now we have, say, another week starting Monday where they don't get hires in. Teams are already making trades. Teams are already making signings because of the CBA being a heavy factor this December. As we know, the collective bargaining agreement, there will be a new agreement coming. There's an expectation that we may very well be getting a holdout during the winter meetings that could either prolong the season, shorten the season, or in general with the offseason. A lot of crazy things are going to happen because this is a huge agreement that needs to be had, and hopefully it doesn't become too lengthy of a process, even though it looks like it is. And because it starts in December, there are teams already having the idea of moving quickly, trying to get some deals done before we get into what is going to be a very lengthy process this winter. So what bothers me about this is the Mets last year, when Steve Cohen and Sandy Alderson came in as the new reins of ownership and president of the team, they already had very short time to start making moves because they had to do their hiring search. This was already getting into winter meetings by the time that Steve Cohen was actually cleared to be owner and everything. It took a while going into late last winter. And because of that, that prohibited them from potentially, targeting certain people depending on who they had in place. Then they got Jared Porter. Jared Porter fell through. Then they went with Zach Scott. Zach Scott has now fallen through. So what matters most to me as a fan that's been evaluating this process is that they don't drag this out to the point where they potentially miss out on either candidates for managerial, coaching staff as a whole, and of course some potential player options that are taken off the market. And I do believe that the big names, I don't really expect many, if at all, big names in free agency to be signed in November. I'll be pretty surprised if that happens. Again, anything's possible, but that's stuff that usually happens in December and beyond. And with the expected holdout with the CBA, that could even drag on longer. So normally there's a bidding war when it comes to the top free agents, guys, that I know the Mets are going to be connected to. But naturally, there's going to be other guys that very well could be acquired during the month of November. So the Mets just need to make sure they get these hires in, or at least make their decision sooner rather than later. And Sandy Alderson is someone that cannot, and I repeat, should not be handling baseball operations. This is something he doesn't want to do. He's made that public on numerous occasions since he arrived back with the Mets in his second tenure, this time being president. So even if they're going to stay in-house and maybe go with some options that they do have respectable options, I won't love that just because obviously that means that they really couldn't find the hire that was right for them. But it dragged out so long that it potentially prohibited them from going different routes for, managers or coaching staff as well. So I just don't love how long it would drag out for them to stay in-house. That would be the first thing that would bother me. But I would still prefer them to make a decision rather soon, whatever it's going to be, without making a desperate decision where you don't make one just for the sake of making one. Make the right one, but make sure that you do it in an appropriate time before we get in the nitty and gritty of this offseason. We cannot be in the back of the line. And when it comes to all discern bidding for these players or people among coaching staff, I'm blanking on the name. I'm actually going to check on Twitter right now, but the former Red Sox hitting coach just over the past week or so is no longer with the club, and the Yankees are weighing him as a potential option. And he's a guy that I would love that the Mets should actually go after, that being in Tim Hires. He's someone that's available, looking for a different opportunity, and he would be a great fit in the Mets coaching staff as their hitting coach, especially. He's done great things with the Red Sox in recent years, was with the Dodgers as well. But the point is that the Mets do not make any type of hires relatively soon, then you're missing out on guys like that. If you want to go back even further, Bob Melvin, okay? I never felt that Bob Melvin had a strong chance of coming to the Mets to begin with, but could things have been different if, say, they already had hires in? Maybe. I really don't think it would have changed much, but the point is that you still have a better opportunity when you have these hires in. So I really hope that they get a decision done soon, hopefully sometime next week, because again, the Mets have until this Sunday to get qualifying offers in. They have until, I believe, the end of the day tomorrow, this Friday, I believe. I don't think it's next Friday. I think it's this Friday, to talk with their free agents where no other team talks with their free agents. Once they get into Sunday and next week, anyone can talk to those free agents. So they need to make sure that they get these discussions in. I've already seen a report through Mike Puma as well that while there's many belief that the Mets will go down the qualifying offer route for Noah Syndergaard, that they may also go down the route of looking for a lower value short-term deal. And my concern with that, and this contradicts what we talked about yesterday in the live stream if you guys didn't check it out already, but my concern with this is the fact that Noah is someone that should not be underestimated the potential that teams would offer him in free agency. Trust me when I say that there will be teams that will be interested in Noah Syndergaard and would even overpay for him in free agency to acquire him. It doesn't matter that he's coming off of Tommy John surgery. They know what Noah can bring and have the expectation of looking at what he would do next season and beyond. They're not worried about the now, they're worried about the future. So the qualifying offer makes most sense to me, and I think it's the best route for the Mets because they can very well risk losing Noah if they say go for a lower offer and a team gives him something that he kind of can't refuse. So I say give him the qualifying offer, even if it's an overpayment. It's something that at least he can bet on himself, awfully similar to what Marcus Stroman did and look what Stroh did. And again, I understand there's uncertainty with Noah, but we cannot have this be a Zach Wheeler situation 2.0 because I promise you, Noah Syndergaard is going to be back up and rolling in this league again. Has plenty of years left, I would say, in his time as an actual starting pitcher in the league and being a strong one. So I think the Mets need to go down the qualifying offer route, and I'll be a little disappointed if they don't. Even with a deal that has incentive, you're still putting risks there if it is low versus a team that could really give him an offer potentially that he shouldn't refuse. So we'll see what happens on the Noah front, but there's no reason for the Mets to quote-unquote penny pinch, and that would come off in that situation if it's a very short-term deal, especially if it's like a 1-year deal or something, but it's not a qualifying offer because it's low actual money that he's making. I don't like that. So again, we'll see. Don't take anything to heart. Mike Puma, he's been plenty wrong already this offseason, as has every other reporter. We'll see what the Mets do. This will be the last live stream unless breaking news happens, like regarding hires, which I don't think it will. This will be the last live stream on the channel until probably next week, Monday or Tuesday. So we'll see what happens over the weekend, if at all. Dave already with a $2 donation, though. Thank you so much for the donation, Dave. Says, unhappy about what the Mets are doing right now. Dave, I wouldn't get too unhappy just yet. I really wouldn't. I think it's very premature still to be like bothered. I can understand being a little upset about the process of these hires dragging out as much as it has. That I don't disagree with you. I think we're at a point now where, the beginning of November, I told a lie. I've been saying this for a while now, guys. The Mets need to get these hires in, get these decisions made at least very soon. Again, Dave, thank you so much for the donation. I appreciate that, buddy. But they're in a spot right now where you need to act relatively fast, okay? Can we just not, as I said already, not be in the back of the line? Why? It's like when you're in the back of the line at lunch and then you go up and the food's actually available to you and there's like nothing there. All the good stuff's gone. You're just left with the scraps. I don't like that. And I know I'm exaggerating a little bit, but point being, I just want the Mets to have their front office solidified rather soon so that way they can have a proper offseason approach. Regardless on who those hires are going to be, as long as you don't make desperation hires, I don't want them to make hires just for the sake of making hires. I'd rather them stay in-house in that scenario than if they truly feel that there isn't a proper fit out there. And hopefully we find out publicly why it was such a struggle for the Mets because there's been a lot of conflicting reports. But with saying that, folks, thank you all so much for the comments again. Help us get to 100 likes. Help us get to 10K subs, all that great stuff, folks. Let's get into the reported candidates because we talked about the majority of these people already, but there are a couple new names that we have not discussed on the channel yet. So in case you guys are unaware of those, let's start with people that we do know. Randy Flores, assistant GM for the St. Louis Cardinals, still in the mix. I haven't seen reporting to suggest that he is not an option right now. I've only seen that he's been connected to the Mets. Carlos Rodriguez for the Tampa Bay Rays is among the executives in consideration. Matt Klein feels a little bit more far-fetched with the Brewers. I don't think the Mets are going to get anyone from the Brewers organization until I'm proven otherwise. I just don't think it's happening. He is assistant GM for them. Ben Sestanovich who apparently, had a good factor into the Braves trade deadline, which of course led them to winning the World Series, literally. He has been named among consideration. I don't think he's leaving Atlanta, but we'll see. And then we have a couple names that I'm excited to get into with you guys, folks, because these are two that, again, I'm intrigued by. I really can't say that I have an issue with them. And also, if I didn't mention already, Carlos Rodriguez for the Tampa Bay Rays, for people that aren't aware, is the VP of Player Development and International Scouting. Sestanovich is the assistant GM, as I mentioned, same thing with Klein. And of course, Raquel Ferreira. And let's get to her real quick before we get to the final two names that will be taking up the bulk of the remainder of the live stream. Raquel, a report came out over the past 24 to 48 hours that was very contradictive. It was through Michael Mayer, who's been doing a great job all offseason long, covering the Mets through Mets Mirage and Mets Blog. He has sources, though. He's been right plenty. He's been pretty spot on for the majority of this offseason. And his sources have indicated that Ferreira is unlikely. But with saying that, that has not been reaffirmed through Andy Martino or other bigger name reporters that normally are covering these types of things. All that has been reported since then is that the Mets are expected to have an interview with Ferreira, and it may have happened already. So that has been the further report since Michael Mayer saying it's unlikely. So even if that does not come to fruition, be a little bit disappointing, yes, because I do like her resume a lot, but no less. We'll see what comes of Raquel. I wouldn't say that she's out of question yet, but I know that Mayer has been spot on at this point when he's saying that someone is unlikely. He has not been wrong yet this offseason. So take that as you will. I really do like her, though. I think she'd be a great fit as GM or president of baseball operations. But let's get into a name that, as soon as he was connected over, Michael Mayer deleted the tweet, as it seems like it came from disgruntled ex-GM Zach Scott. What are you referring to? What are you referring to, Northeast? Oh, that is regarding the unlikely Raquel Ferreira tweet? He deleted the tweet? Are you sure about that? Let's double check. Let me go on my... I'm doing great, Noah. How are you, my man? Thank you for being here. Again, shout out everybody in the chat. Yes, it's gone. Okay, let me double check. If he deleted the tweet, then that's a potentially a good sign then. I'm glad. Thank you for mentioning that, because I didn't notice. Because again, it's been a day or two now since he tweeted that out, because we haven't spoken about it yet on the channel. Okay, this is why I love you guys. You guys help me out, especially because, granted, why would I know that it got deleted unless someone told me? Because it's been a little bit. Let's see here. Going through my quote tweets, because I know I quote tweeted. Hold on. Oh, he did delete it. Well, that's actually some good news. That's very good news. Now, granted, don't get hyped up. Don't think that, Ferreira, she's here. We got her. It's all but done. Do not think that, folks. But I'm saying that the fact that he deleted it means that his source probably told him otherwise shortly after, and he felt it was necessary to delete it. That's good. I appreciate that. Okay. Shout out to my man in the chat for letting me know, because I did not know that. Thank you. Awesome. That way we don't have a streamer I'm giving you guys fake news or anything like that. Okay, so to this point, looks like Raquel Ferreira is very much in the mix, just like the others, and she has been as hyped up as they come for the Mets among this search over the past week. That's why I was saying that it really felt like that, one, she could be a decent likelihood, and two, that we might see a decision this week. It doesn't look like that's happening now, but I do find it encouraging that he deleted that tweet, and I'll probably address that on Twitter or something later, if not tomorrow. But yes, Ferreira still in the mix, VP and assistant GM for the Red Sox, over 20 years in the industry, working herself up in the Red Sox organization, starting off in the 1990s. Just has done a fantastic job, has been a part of 4 World Series winning Red Sox teams, and yeah, I really like her resume. I really hope that the Mets can land her. But again, I'm not getting my hopes up either, because I've wanted the Mets to get a lot of people this offseason, which goes to show that they're going after the right people in my eyes. Everyone that they've been connected to, for the most part, outside of, I'd say, maybe 1 or 2, I've liked. They all have very strong resumes. There isn't really many people that I'm looking at and saying that, oh, they would be a bad fit. No, they have credible resumes, and I like that a bit. And I see a lot of really nice comments in the chat too. So thank you all so much for that as well. I appreciate the kind words and the support, folks. But a name that I want to touch on already that I didn't get a chance to, I believe is Sig Medal. Is it Sig Medal? Do you pronounce the J in there? I'm assuming it's silent, like an H almost. So if I'm wrong, please someone correct me. Please no one take offense to it. But Sig has been connected to the Mets over the past day or so, and the Mets have been seeking an interview, yet I don't know if that interview has happened yet. He is a really interesting story. Of course, I had no clue who this guy was. Again, you have to be someone that's really taking the time to deep dive all these executives, especially from the Orioles, because when you think the Orioles, a lot of Mets and baseball fans were like, oh my God, no, this would be so Mets. Of course, they're going after Orioles executive. Pump the brakes for a minute. Do not judge Sig for 1 second on the Orioles. This man is a fantastic baseball executive as well. He worked himself up, was part of the crop from the Lunau tree during his time with the Houston Astros, was a pivotal part in their player development and really what they birthed, who they drafted, and building their core for their World Series championship, cheating scandal or not, and for gaining 2 other World Series appearances, even though that they fell short, of course, to the Mets rivals, that being in the Nationals and yes, the Atlanta Braves. But Sig is a really interesting story. This is a guy that used to work for NASA as an engineer. Yes, we're literally looking at rocket scientists, folks. That's it. And what has he done since then? According to Wikipedia and everything that I've read, Sig started his baseball career because of Moneyball, the book. Before the movie, the book, which people say is better than the movie. I haven't read the book, but I've seen the movie, really like the movie. But no less, the book that came out in 2003, which was about Billy Beane, of course, and about really adopting sabermetrics analytics in baseball and changing the wave of baseball when it comes to using these numbers to take advantage, especially for smaller market teams. He was inspired by Moneyball so much that made him get into the baseball field, and he has worked himself up. Just a really interesting story when I'm reading up more and more. He's a really smart guy. And he's been doing really good things as well with the Orioles. The Orioles have the best farm in baseball for a reason. He has been a factor in that in recent years. And he's someone that looks like that he would be a solid fit for the Mets. Now, the question is, how much interest does he have? We have no clue. It won't be surprising at all if he does not come to the Mets, either because they don't prioritize him enough or he doesn't want to come here. But Sig is another guy that I would definitely want you guys to make sure that you're keeping an eye on, as he has been a reported option for the Mets at this point. So keep him in mind. Going to read a little bit further if there's anything I'm missing. Okay, so in 2012, Mcneil was the director of decision sciences for the Houston Astros. This is according to Wikipedia, where he supported recruitment decisions based on physical tests and historical player performance. Hiring Mcneil to apply an analytics-based decision free on their player choices was part of the effort to revitalize the team, and that obviously worked because the Astros grew their core performance issues in prior seasons. He helped the team create the STOUT system, named after the combination of stat and scout for making player choices. The system was criticized for dehumanizing players, but after training off some players and making new recruits, the Astros farm system became ranked among the best in baseball. Obviously, we all know the core group that they've had in recent years. Sig was a crucial part in that. The Astros also used analytics to persuade players that were uncomfortable with non-traditional positions on the field to embrace shifts, which the team now uses very heavily. And then in 2015, he became one of the team's advisors, whose login credentials were believed to have been used to hack into the team's database. And when Mike Elias or Elias, even though I think it's Elias, was hired from the Astros as general manager of the Baltimore Orioles. He then hired Mcneil as the assistant general manager for the Orioles. And I know that nothing's been pretty there, but you have to realize the Orioles in recent years, since when I'm trying to think when he came in, it was just over the past couple of years, they went into the Orioles organization that was adopted that had so much turmoil already. So you cannot blame him at all for anything bad that's happened with the Orioles in recent years. That is not on him. He's definitely helped out the organization as a whole and really starting to build something with having the number one prospect pool in baseball right now. And yeah, we'll see if he ends up landing with the Mets. I'm not going to bet on it at all, but definitely a very interesting name. And it's been fun learning more about him. And I plan to do more homework on him as well, because he's been an interesting character. He's the first guy that I've seen that literally was a rocket scientist and then came in and said, yeah, I want to be a baseball executive. I want to get into baseball because of how much Moneyball inspired me. That's pretty cool. I've never seen that before. That's like a one-of-one scenario. But if you guys have any thoughts on Mcneil, please let me know. in the chat. All I know that, especially from the replies I've been seeing, all Orioles fans do not want him gone. They have been very adamant. They've been pissed off, just like any other team fan base that has seen the Mets connected to their executive. They've been pissed off because they know that Mcneil is actually something special. So we'll see if he actually is going to be a heavy candidate for the Mets, where they get an interview done, assuming that they haven't already, and that something comes of it. And yeah, we'll see what happens from there, folks. And to really wrap things up on the individual people at this point, before we get into more of a broken down Q&A. And again, folks, help us get to 100 likes, help us get to 10K subs if you're enjoying the streams. A lot of more great content is happening, into especially next week. There might be one more thing before the week's end, but outside that, we'll be having plenty of content next week and beyond as we get in the nit and gritty of the start of really free agency and everything that's going to be going on with the Mets search here, assuming no breaking news happens over the weekend. But the final person that's been connected to the Mets is someone that I like quite a bit, and someone that comes off deceiving when you look at what his resume is, and that is Billy Eppler. In case you guys are unaware on Billy Eppler, he was most recently the GM for, I believe, 5-year span with the LA Angels. And during that time, Eppler was there from 2015 until 2020. No, the Angels did not have playoff berths during that time. But how much can you blame on Eppler here? I've done a lot of deep diving on Eppler, and something that I've known for years now is just how poor Angels ownership has been. And when I look at Eppler, especially what happened with them when they signed Anthony Rendon to that $245 million contract a couple years ago after losing out on Garrett Cole, Zach Wheeler, among others, that didn't look like a good move. It wasn't a good move. It made no sense for an Angels team that needs starting pitching, especially big name starting pitching depth, at least something, to then give away all the money that you have pretty much to a third baseman. Really, when you have the Albert Pujols contract that'll be coming off the book soon, or at least you would be done with it soon, they then still go with Rendon, which didn't make sense to me, especially when they need pitching. But after doing my research, everything has indicated that Eppler was not the reason for Rendon. Ownership through the Angels completely took over after being so bothered by the fact that they were not able to land Garrett Cole, not able to land Zach Wheeler, when especially Cole, he just won for the biggest payday with the Yankees. And that's something that's really hard to compete with. The Angels try their best, but he went to the Yanks. And because of that, ownership came over, decided to put Eppler aside, did not even listen to him, and made sure that they got a big signing in free agency to really try to help make the fan base happy, even though that all Angels fans would agree they are not happy with the state of the club right now, because they have two generational players, two of the best players in baseball, and Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, in which Eppler was the reason that Ohtani signed with the Angels. Keep that in mind also, folks. And also is the reason why that Mike Trout extension happened. That's because of Eppler too. The pitching, while yes, you can definitely put some blame on Eppler over the years for not doing enough, a lot of it, and I mean a lot of it, goes on ownership here. And that's why I think this is a man that, according to also Joe DeMaio, I loved how he pointed this out earlier too, because I agree with him. He said that he really feels that he will be good in his second go around as a GM. And I tend to agree with him. He also used to be an assistant with the Yankees, and Eppler was someone that was connected to the Mets last offseason. There was rumors about him, and also according to reports, and it was through Andy Martino as well. Say what you will about Andy. I'm not an Andy fan. I'm just reiterating what was stated. Going back to January, right after Jared Porter departed with the Mets, when the Mets were looking for their new GM option before just ultimately staying in-house with Zach Scott that they had just hired also, Eppler was among the names that was in that conversation to be the GM after Jared Porter was parted with from the Mets. So Eppler has been connected to the Mets really over the past year. He has been since working in the agency side of things since late September, but don't put any stock in this. This is not a Brody Van Wagenen situation. Eppler has plenty of years of credible experience. Again, known for the Shohei Ohtani signing, known for the likes of the Mike Trout extension, known for the awesome trade with Simmons, shortstop, when he was one of the better shortstops in the game defensively as well during his time with the Angels, along with a bunch of other moves. And yes, not everything has been pretty. The Justin Upton deal is something that I definitely didn't like from him either. But with saying that, he's someone that, especially with a payroll and having a direction where ownership is not going to overpower, was in the best interest of the clubs. And of course, Steve Cohen isn't going to do that. He's not going to prohibit the Mets from addressing something that they need to address, right? Where the GM wants to address it, because in the hindsight, if Eppler was given the ability to run things how he wanted to run them with the Angels, he would have had that money by not signing Rendon and allocating that money, and then following year's free agency pitching wise, or the year after, in the following year, and that the following year, I believe, was that including Bauer or no? I think it was just short. No, I think maybe it was including Bauer. Yeah, I might be getting myself confused. And again, doesn't matter about Bauer, but I'm saying is he could have used that money for good the year following, or by potentially landing a big name pitcher on a big name contract and giving away some young pieces within their prospect pool. So Eppler, I'm not against him at all. He's someone that I am pretty intrigued by, and he's someone that the Mets don't have to go through barriers of interviewing, and there hasn't been a reported interview to this point. We'll see what comes of this. Martino originally reported that there was, then he reported afterwards saying that he had misspoken and that the Mets are looking to interview him, but it has not been, they have interest, but there has not been an interview yet. This was yesterday or so. Just goes to show you how contradictive all Mets reporting is, especially in the offseason. So take it as you will, folks. But Eppler, someone that you don't have to go through hurdles asking for permission from other teams. No, because he's there. He's a free agent when it comes to being an executive. Go after him and see if the Mets will in fact land him or not. But I do like him as an option, especially someone who has proven himself. I think is just deserving of being with a team that has proper ownership, something that he did not have during his time with the Angels. Because remember, just because you have money doesn't mean that you're having full control here. This is also the same ownership for the Angels that ended up vetoing the trade for Jock Peterson that they tried over the past year or two. And because they tried to make that deal happen, and then no ownership came in and said, no, we're not going to do that. So that's one of the multiple things, and really helped set them up for failure with that Rendon contract. Something that as soon as that happened for the Angels, I'm like, what are you doing? It makes no sense. Trout needs pitching. They don't need offense. They don't. You can make cheaper pieces offensively for this club without throwing that to Rendon, who's already hit his peak in his career and now may very well be a little bit injury riddled throughout the remainder of his career. I don't wish it on him, but he's coming off a significant injury now, so we don't know what to expect from him next year. But let's see your thoughts here, guys, on Eppler in particular, along with all these other executives. I'm going to go up in the chat a little bit and just read down. So let's see what you got for me, guys. We might start in a lockout this year. I know. I hope not. But yeah, I know that that is possible. Marino, yeah, I know. I agree. He's not a fun owner for the Angels. I feel bad for Angels fans. Ever hear of someone in baseball that means you have not done your homework? Reading, looking up information is fundamental. Oh, of course. Absolutely. That's all you can do. 100%. Eppler is a risk, but would be okay with him and GM if the Mets can get the others on the list. Okay. And might I add, folks, that we're at a point where while the Mets could hire president baseball operations, it seems like they're going in the direction of hiring a GM that will also be controlling all player baseball ops as well. Which, again, is okay, but it just comes off contradictory to what Sandy was portraying going into the offseason, saying that, president baseball operations is priority. It's like, okay, but, we're not going to get one. We're going to get a GM that's going to control both, which is fine. I want the GM to control everything, not Sandy, because Sandy's not supposed to, and he knows that. Hey, Tyler, did the Mets schedule for 2022? Are we playing more? I have not checked the Mets schedule for 2022 intensely yet. I have to double check. I breezed by it, I want to say 3 weeks ago, but I haven't looked at it in a little bit now. I see Raquel gain the job while Sandy Alderson's still running things. I mean, if Raquel gets the job, Sandy will not be involved in baseball ops. The only way Sandy would be involved in baseball ops, even with the Mets making hires, is that those hires insist on he be a part of baseball ops. But he has made it obvious and known that he is not here to be a part of that. And I appreciate that from Sandy's side of things because he's aware he shouldn't be. That's not his role, nor should it be. Fans over worrying about Sandy. I understand criticisms at times. I think the main thing about Sandy is we simply don't know what's actually happening right now and what's not. That's the biggest issue when evaluating this. The reporting has been so contradictory and inconsistent. It's really, really hard to grasp what exactly is going on, what is causing everything to fall out the way it is. How natural or unnatural has this process been? Because remember, this entire process has been overblown to a certain extent. These names should not be leaked, like candy, just left and right. It should not be that available, but it's being made available because this is New York media and this is what they love. They eat up for breakfast. And it's frustrating because I know that if this was a smaller market club, these names would not be constantly getting out there the way that it has been. It's really setting the Mets up for failure here. And again, we're going to find out soon enough, hopefully, what exactly has been, the main issues for things prolonging as much as they have, why exactly they haven't been able to land certain people that they have had interest in. But there have been good reasons as to why a lot of people haven't came here. Again, we need further information. It's too blurry right now. It's hard to read, And Sandy with the $5 donation. Thank you for that. Let's give this man a 10K. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that a lot, Insanity. Thank you so much. You're a great support. Everyone, hype in the chat for Insanity for being a great member and friend on the channel. Thank you so much for that, buddy. I appreciated that a lot. Were you happy for Darno, a former? Oh, of course I was. Yeah, of course I was happy for Darno. He's definitely rejuvenized his career since parting ways with the Mets. And I commend him for that. Absolutely. That just goes to show more lack of player evaluation on the Mets side of things. I know he's been injury prone, but the guy's still been a very solid catcher. And I think all Mets fans would agree they would probably want him as starter right now over guys like James McCann or even to a certain extent to Mcneil. I don't think the Mets will pass up on Ferreira. I hope not, but again, I don't know, and we don't know exactly how much interest, if at all, she has, so we'll see. Out of Ramirez, Bryant, Castellanos, which one is most likely to end up with the Mets? I would say most likely it's Bryant, as long as he wants to hit the market and doesn't return to the Giants. As long as that happens, I'd say Bryant, because he's the easiest to land, realistically. It's a heavy infielder market. Bryant is not the top one among them. He's up there, but he's not number one. He will come at a price that the Mets will be able to afford, assumably. Castellanos, you're going to have to cough up a draft pick for, and he's going to cost a pretty penny as well for a guy that isn't nearly as diverse the way that Chris Bryant is, who doesn't just play third base, but can literally play everywhere in the corner outfield as well. Jose Ramirez loved J-Ram, but there's no denying that if the Mets would go after J-Ram, they're going to have to give up a lot of assets. And are those assets going to be more prominent than, say, a team like the Toronto Blue Jays that the Cleveland, now Guardians, try to make a deal with at the MLB trade deadline, but the Blue Jays backed out because they couldn't afford what Cleveland was asking. So Mets have a lot of assets, but is it enough to outbid other teams right now? I don't know the confidence in that. I know Toronto doesn't just have a great prospect pool, but has guys that they would be willing to part ways with in their lineup right now that could help the Cleveland Guardians for multiple years because they have years of control on their contract. So it's really hard. I think J-Ram would be close to, similar to George Springer's situation between the Mets and the Blue Jays. See who wins that bidding war. And, assets-wise, I think Blue Jays may edge out the Mets there. But at the same time, the Mets, again, Chris Bryant, I would assume, as long as he becomes a free agent, would be the most likely fit because he's the easiest to acquire when you're weighing those other two. From everything that we've seen at this point. You think we are re-signed Baez? Yes, I do. I know Brian isn't guaranteed. He's literally from Vegas, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he wants to stay out west. Eppler is a great hire. He can move up to president baseball ops, or is Cohen waiting for Stearns in next year or two? Again, he might be. Again, my concern with waiting for Stearns, like anything else, is that you're waiting for something that there's no certainty. Even with him having supposed interest and stuff like that, the Brewers may be able to sway him to stay long term. Like, we don't know. There's just so much uncertainty. Thoughts on Buster retiring? Unfortunate. Buster Posey, one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher I've ever, laid my eyes upon. Wishing him nothing but the best in retirement. Going out on a high. I think I commend that most about Buster retiring. Now he's only 34, had an awesome bounce back year. Really proved everyone wrong, along with the entire Giants team that won 107 games. So Giants are going to miss the hell out of him for sure. But I also know that they have a great young and promising catching prospect. So they have potential. But yeah, Buster, wishing him nothing but the best. Definitely a short Hall of Famer, no doubt in my mind. Buster Posey for manager, not happening. Get the likes up. Thank you for that comment. I appreciate. I don't know where we're at in the likes, folks, but I hope us get to 100 as always. And thank you so much for the support. To reiterate again, this has been an exhausting process for the Mets and player baseball operations and GM. We've been doing these discussions for a month now. And while I understand why this is a lengthy process, just everything about it's been poor with the reporting. Everything. If the reporting wasn't the way it was, and it was far more low key that you would expect, as I said before, with smaller market clubs, I would have a completely different perception with this all. I would much rather things be hush hush and we just find out things when they actually happen. That would be awesome. But having these conflicting reports almost on a daily basis is exhausting. It's a poor look for the media, once again, per usual, because that's how the offseason has been working ever since Steve Cohen became owner. And, and I don't really blame that nearly as much on Steve as I do with the media in itself. But it's just such a pain in the neck. And I know it's just the beginning because the Mets have so many other hires they need to do, and free agent signings and trades. They got to do so much. And I know it's a long offseason, but especially depending on how the CBA is going to go, like, we don't know. This might drag out really long. This might drag out short. Like, it's just exhausting because it's going to be a wild ride this offseason. I just hope that this part of the process will resolve itself soon. Yes, Dusty Baker did re-sign already with the Astros. What are the chances the Mets bring back VR? I think that they're more likely than unlikely. Reports over the past week and a half now have suggested that there is interest for rekindling that relationship again. So while the Mets won't have the Alars like they did last season in Pilar and Jonathan, I think that there is a solid chance VR returns with the Mets, as long as he's willing to be in that bench role like he was supposed to be going into this year, but had to play almost every day because of injuries and inconsistencies with guys like JD Davis at third base, especially. Would I hire Ron Washington? Ron Washington's great. I don't know. A part of me feels like Washington might be a little too old school, but at the same time, he's been involved in the game for a while. And while he hasn't been managing, he's been doing a great job in his separate position, especially most recently what he's been doing with the Braves at third base. I wouldn't hate the idea of Washington at all. I would just have some uncertainties. And I think that goes for most people that would be options managerial wise for the Mets. The only guy that really felt like a slam dunk to me was Bob Melvin. Eyes locked on him like no tomorrow ever since the Mets were connected to him through a hypothetical article from Ken Rosenthal. But now that Melvin's with San Diego, everyone else that, you can advocate for or against them, and you have valid reasons for doing so. I don't really have much of a personal preference to this point on who I would like as manager. I just want to know who that is going to be, because we got to get hires in the front office before we can even do that, right? Asia with the $10 donation. Thank you for that, Asia. Hope you're doing well. Thank you again, my friend. Hey, Rory, what's good? How you feeling about your NL rival winning the chip? I feel like if the Mets didn't screw up, they could have been in that situation. The Mets were too inconsistent all year long. I don't think that even in the scenario where the Mets won their division, that they would have propelled the way that the Braves did. There were too many things that went wrong for the Mets this year that were not addressed, that were not fixed, especially with the guys that are supposed to be the most pivotal parts of your lineup offensively. So I really, looking back, especially down the stretch, it really did not. The Mets just had no groove to them at all. They were so one-dimensional of a team offensively, and they just couldn't snap that all year long. So I do not see that happening. But look, Braves were the better team. I have so much respect for what they did. Proved everyone wrong. And it's funny because it reminds me quite a bit, actually, of the Nationals run in 2019, because the Nationals had a horrid start to the year in 2019. We know that story. We're multiple games under 500. They had a huge game, of course, in the Kurt Suzuki home run. They the biggest blown save of the season out of so many blown saves of the season in 2019 at NDC, and that was really what propelled the Nats the most. I felt like that gave them the momentum down the stretch to go on their run, and then they went on to beat the Houston Astros the same way the Braves did. So, every single team in the NL East, but the Mets, has won a World Series in the 2000s. Hopefully, the Mets are the next team up, because it's definitely frustrating. What's the deal with Mcneil? We don't know what's next for Mcneil. He's either going to stay with the team. He may be utilized in corner outfield should he stay on the team, in hopes that his bat comes back to what it's usually been. And which, if that's the case, I can understand, especially if you have a more defensively sound outfield in your other two positions, whether that's center and right, or left and center if he was in right. In the scenario where Conforto's gone, he could be utilized as a super utility guy. But I don't know. I really like Mcneil, and I know he's going to bounce back, and I don't want to see him gone. But there's something that just tells me that he's going to be part of something significant this offseason. And as long as it is part of something significant, I'm in favor for it. By no means am I in favor of parting ways with Mcneil unless he's part of something that is going to drastically impact the Mets for the better. Even if he's not the only asset. If he's one of the multiple, okay, as long as it's worthwhile in the end. What's up, Irv? How's it going, my friend? Oh, thank you so much for the kind words. I appreciate that. Why don't we do the acting GM from within with Sandy having more input for another year? They could do something along those lines again, but it's just going to be very contradictory to what they were approaching going into the offseason. And Sandy should not be involved in baseball ops. He comes off way too conservative at times. And in the sense of, the Mets, they need a different mind to be controlling things right now. And there's a reason why Sandy's not in favor of even being a part of baseball ops. He's made that clear. That's not his role. He's not going to be with the Mets for much longer either. So keep that in mind. He's simply here because of Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen needed Sandy to really, brush up nicely to the executives of the opposing clubs to get him clear to come in as owner for the Mets, because that's how intimidating Steve has come off since day one. So Sandy won't be here long, and I don't want him a part of baseball ops. That's not his role, and he's aware of that. This fake news gives you more material to discuss. We don't know what's real and what's fake. That's the issue, James. We don't. And we're not going. We might never know for certain stuff. And for other things, it's been so contradictory all offseason long. Pilar's option wasn't picked up because it was mutual. The Mets didn't pick it up, and Pilar didn't pick it up. So, and in essence, the reason being is that Pilar is betting on himself because he believes he can get more than $1.5 million in free agency, and he most certainly can. I expect him to, especially after hitting 15 bombs this year, fourth best on the Mets. Even though that says more about the Mets' lack of offense, I think it does his production. Pilar, I expect him to get more money than what he currently would be getting. So makes sense, and it makes sense for the Mets too. I'm not against them parting with him. I liked Pilar quite a bit. I did, but the Mets will be able to live without him just fine. Is Dom gone? I will be somewhat surprised if Dom's with the Mets next season. He's actually one of the people that I feel is most likely to be parted with, as we've discussed in our previous video on the channel. You would get rid of Dom because he would be part of a deal that's bigger, more than likely. I think that's something that you misunderstood a lot of times, Gerald, from your comments that I've seen. You have to understand that even when a player's value is low, years of control has plenty of value in itself. And you're looking at the future. You're not looking at what they did most recently, for the most part, especially with younger guys. There are a lot of teams, especially clubs that do not have big payrolls that they can work with, that would be very appealing to acquire a guy like Dom. Same thing goes for JD Davis. Same thing goes for Jeff McNeil. Same thing goes for some other players. So if you put all those players, especially in one deal, you can get yourself a pretty package in return of someone or multiple assets that can help contribute to the team right away and have a far greater impact, a more significant impact than what we'd be gaining out of those players respectively. That's the rationale behind it. I don't agree with trading Dom just for the sake of trading Dom, unless you're to the point where you feel you have to part with him because there's just no role for him as the season approaches. But again, I think it makes most sense for the Mets to part ways with certain guys on the club, as long as you're kind of doing it together. That's because teams are very much interested in stuff like that. Years of control on your contract goes a long way. And folks, we're already 15 likes away from 100. Thank you for the support, folks. I appreciate that. Thank you all kindly. We're going to be wrapping up the stream in over the next couple minutes, so make sure to get your final comments, questions, and concerns in. As I said in the past, I'll say again, we'll be going over a lot more of, just these general questions about the future of certain players throughout the offseason in separate live streams and free agency live streams, as we did last offseason, and, really upgrading them. I'm looking forward to them a lot. And also keep in mind that the Mets have a lot of things coming up. So when things like, them either re-signing players, especially significant ones, we'll probably be going over in separate individual videos or streams. And same thing also can be said to a certain extent when it comes to arbitration. That's going to be huge as well. It looks like there's a solid chance the Mets would be parting ways with some key pieces in arbitration for going for, bigger upgrades in free agency in the offseason. So once that all unravels too, we'll be having all those discussions. We'll be having a lot of hypothetical discussions. We'll be having a lot of factual discussions on all the reports and the latest news regarding who the Mets are targeting, what kind of roster configuration we're looking at. Obviously, who the hires are going to be when those hires are in place. We'll be talking about that. And same thing goes for managers, coaching staff, all that stuff. It's all going to be vital. We'll also be getting into prospect talk this offseason too, because we haven't done that in a while, and that's something I plan to retouch on and hopefully get on that more than I have in the past. And I'm looking forward to that because, yeah, there's been a lot of good Mets prospects that we haven't talked about much on the channel just yet. Do I do live streams during the winter meetings? Not necessarily like live, like as it's happening, but I do live streams throughout the winter meetings. Yes, like when news is happening, of course, and when there's rumors starting to pick up. If say there's a lot of heat for a big name player or something, we'll probably go live before that and kind of prep in hopes that it happens, just like we did last offseason. Oh, no, Gerald. The Mets didn't acquire Barrios because they didn't have the proper assets. The Blue Jays gave up their number 2 and number 4 prospects as part of a deal for Barrios. Mets could not compete with that because Blue Jays prospects, their top prospects, a bunch of them are higher ranked than the Mets. And they can handle losing the guys that they lost. The Mets can't handle losing a Francisco Alvarez, losing certain pitching depth in their prospect pool. Third base, if they don't acquire a third baseman, like they can't lose that unless they're making sure that the return is people that are going to be filling those voids or that they're going to have a different option going forward. Do you think they'll start signing free agents early? I think that they may be making some moves early in November, but I don't have a big expectation for anyone of like major significance. Like we're talking big names until, later in the winter. But I could be proven wrong. We'll see. Somebody tells me the stove won't get too hot though, like until we get into towards the end of November and beyond. No, Gerald, I get what you're saying, but I'm just saying that wasn't the factor in Barrios. The Mets couldn't afford Barrios. That's just as simple as it was. And Ron, thank you. I appreciate the kind words, my friend. What's up, Brandon? Hype in the chat for Brandon. Brandon's a good buddy of mine. Hope Brandon's doing well. Long time no see. JD, Mcneil, and a prospect for Chris Sale? No, I don't see the Mets going down that route. And Chris Sale, one, why is he leaving Boston? They need pitching depth. They don't need to keep getting rid of pitching. No, thank you on Chris Sale. Sign Eppler, trade Dom, JD, and McNeil to the Angels for Trout and Ohtani. Boom, champs. Michael, I like the way you think. Trade for Buxton. I'm always in favor of Buxton. If it's a day that ends in Y, I'm in favor of Buxton. I know everyone's scared about. Again, that's a completely fair criticism to have with his injuries. I'm not against anyone that is concerned about that, is not in favor of him because of that reason. I hear you completely. I'm someone that's in favor of him because I feel that there is so much there. I think the potential far outweighs the risk, in my opinion. But I 1,000% understand everyone that is conflicted or against it. I hear you. Trust me. Brandon with the $3 donation. Hyping the chat for Brandon again, folks. What a beauty. Appreciate that, Brandon. Thank you again, buddy. That means a lot. Blacklist Outdoors. What is up, my man? Long time no see. How you doing? Right before we're wrapping up the live stream, too. Thank you for being here, my man. Hope you're doing well. I literally earlier today, I was drinking out of the latest tumbler that you had given me last. Thank you again for that, buddy. Thought about it since Ferreira has information on sale and could pry him away. That's fair, but again, you're assuming that the Mets get Ferreira. Let's let them get Ferreira and then go from there. I've been connecting the Red Sox hitting coach that just departed with the Mets in a scenario where they land Ferreira. But again, they got to land Ferreira first, and even then, how certain is it that you would be able to have those connections with Boston still? It's just you're putting two and two together. But yeah, no, Sale does not make any sense to me, other than him being a lefty. What's one realistic trade you could see the Mets making and your favorite for the Mets present baseball operations? Jim, I really don't have a favorite when it comes to hires at this point. That bridge has really burned because of just everything that's happened in this process. I like a lot of the options. I just hope that I personally hope that they land one of them. Someone that is credible among people on this list. A lot I'm in favor of. A realistic trade for the Mets, I think that we may see this offseason. It really ties in a lot like last offseason because the teams are in the same spot. The Oakland A's are going to be sellers. The Cleveland Guardians could very well be sellers as long as they get the right price for a guy like J-Ram especially. Then you're also looking at a team like the Cincinnati Reds that are focused more so on development from what their GM has literally just stated after Castellanos opted out and after trading Tucker Barnhart. A realistic trade I could see the Mets doing would honestly be for Matt Chapman, because I think Chapman wouldn't cost you nearly as much as a Jose Ramirez would. I think Chapman, especially with him, he had a solid year for sure, low and average, plenty of slugging though, had hit a lot of bombs. And I think Chapman, because of the route that the A's are in and having to go through arbitration with guys that they don't want to cough up the money to, I definitely think that he could be a great fit for the Mets on a price that they can definitely afford. prospect player wise. It's not going to cost them like a Brett Beatty, unless they. Yeah, it shouldn't cost them a Brett Beatty because Chapman, you can have Chapman and still have Beatty as your future third baseman. So yeah, I think Chapman is actually very realistic. I can understand if you guys don't like Chapman, but realize that the Mets do go down that route. You're getting a guy that can hit you easily 25, 30 bombs, 70, 80 RBIs a season. Low on average, that's okay. He makes up for it with his defense. He's arguably the best defensive third baseman in the game of baseball. The Mets need a shutdown third baseman on that corner. They were literally one of, if not the worst team in all of baseball last season at the third base position. Chapman would bring them plenty. And I do think that he would resonate well with the Mets rather quickly. But again, that's just my opinion. I understand everyone's stances, both in favor and against here. But with saying that, folks, that is going to wrap up today's discussion. You're all over the country working, been in all the time zones this past month. That's crazy, my man. But I appreciate you chiming in, no less. That's going to wrap up this live stream. So whether you watch this live or on replay, thank you all so much for the support. Expect more great content as always. Don't expect much, if anything, for the remainder of the week heading into the weekend, because next week is really when I expect things to really happen. So get ready for that, folks. Plenty of content is coming as always. I'm looking forward to sharing it with you all. So thank you again for the support, folks. Have a great rest of your night. Whenever you're watching this, have a great rest of your day, maybe even. And I will definitely talk to you soon. Let's go Mets, baby. Let's get these hires in. Let's get some moves done. And let's get started on what should hopefully be a very exciting offseason for the New York Mets. Thank you again, folks. Peace out.